What October 7th basically did, though, was it blew the lid on the ironclad censorship regime that Israel had. Because prior to October 7th, as I discussed before, if you talked about this topic, you were immediately targeted, immediately removed, immediately demonetized, immediately attacked, and they got you up out of there right away. Now Israel is starting to refocus its strategy on media. This is why they're paying influencers $7,000 per post. This is why your Twitter timeline has changed to pro-Israel all of a sudden. This is why they're starting to censor people on certain platforms. This is a group of people that have been ostracized from many different societies, expelled from many different societies, and persecuted from many different societies for thousands of years. This is why this international cabal works together to protect the interests of Israel. Now, let's get into October 7th, okay? This was the beginning of the Great Awakening, okay? October 7th. I'm going to describe the social media landscape prior to October 7th, and I'm going to describe it after, because this is very important for you guys to understand. Prior to October 7th, if you uttered Zionism, if you uttered the state of Israel, and you talked about, them boys, any of this stuff, it was probably going to be one of the fastest ways for you to get banned, okay? Now, we have to be honest, and I'd be remiss if I didn't tell you guys who was running social media platforms at the time. The head of YouTube was Susan Wojcicki. The founders of Google, Sergey Brin, who she was very close with, by the way. The head of Meta and Facebook and Instagram, Mark Zuckerberg. Head of Instagram, Adam Mosseri. The reality is, a lot of these social media companies were run by Zionists. It is what it is, okay? And especially on YouTube, posting anything that talked about anything critical of Israel, since so few people did it, you would be put under a magnifying glass and it'd be like whack-a-mole. You say something, bam, they hit you immediately. You're getting a strike. You're getting your channel terminated. ADL's writing a hit piece on you. SPLC's writing a hit piece on you. Media Matters is writing a hit piece on you. If you come out and talked about any of this stuff prior to October 7th, you were immediately put on a list and they would do everything in their power to cancel you and destroy you. Whether it's by shadow banning you, demonetizing you, or just outright nuking your channel, that's what it was, okay? That was the landscape on all of social media on this topic. And if you did Google dancing or art students or 9/11 or USS Liberty or JFK nuclear proliferation or NUMEC, it was very hard to get answers. That all changed after October 7th. As you guys know, Hamas invaded on October 7th with Operation Al-Aqsa Flood. They invaded for a bunch of different geopolitical reasons that I've covered many times on this channel, right? But the occupation, the Abraham Accords, them building the temple and destroying the Al-Aqsa Mosque. That's why the operation was called Operation Al-Aqsa Flood. Those were some of the reasons they invaded and attacked. 1,200 people were tragically killed on that day. Now, when it comes to who killed them, this is where dispute comes. We know 400 of those individuals were enemy combatants and members of the IDF, right? And we also know that the Hannibal Directive was activated on that day, according to Yoav Gallant, the defense minister, right? So the Hannibal Directive is basically a directive where the Israelis are allowed to basically kill other Israelis for fear of them being captured and brought back to Gaza to be used in hostage negotiations later on. To this day, no one really knows how many were killed by Hamas versus how many were killed by the IDF. No one really knows. Now, if you talk to pro-Israel people, they'll tell you, oh, Hamas killed everybody. That's simply not true, because a lot of the people that were killed in a manner where it would be impossible for Hamas to do so, because they don't have Hellfire missiles and Apache helicopters, right? They don't have the capabilities to murder some of these individuals the way that they were murdered. But that's a whole other discussion. But the point you need to know, and the takeaway that you need to know from this, is that October 7th was significant because Hamas invaded, a lot of people were killed, and this started the conflict that we're currently still seeing now 2 years later. Now, when October 7th happened, what ended up happening was everyone got behind the Israelis. The entire Western world got behind them. People were saying Israel has the right to defend itself. Do you condemn Hamas, as Piers Morgan was saying all over the place? And at that point, they could do no wrong, right? Everyone felt sorry for them. But what quickly proceeded after really went to go ahead and show what the Israelis have been doing forever. The mask came off. And what we saw was the systemic bombing and destruction and murdering of tens of thousands of people. And when this is all said and done and the smoke clears, it's probably going to be hundreds of thousands of people. As of the date of the recording of this stream and this broadcast, roughly 60,000 plus have been murdered by the Israelis. The Israelis estimate somewhere between 20 to 30,000 of them were Hamas. Israeli internal documents have estimated that roughly 80% of the people that were killed were innocent people, right? And it's going to probably be a lot more, because a lot of these people were pulverized when they were attacked and bombed. A lot of these people are buried in the rubble. Something like 90% of Gaza's infrastructure has been destroyed. The starvation and all the other people dying from disease, malnutrition, different ways that they died. So when this is all said and done, it's going to be hundreds of thousands dead. Now, this led the international community to heavily condemn Israel, rightfully so. This led to several genocide experts and historians to say, yeah, this is absolutely a genocide, while the Israeli government denies it, right? And the Hezbollah police, as I call them, also deny it, right? Pro-Israel people say that it wasn't a genocide. This is them defending themselves. They say other ridiculous comments like the IDF is the most moral army in the world. We have the best ratio, blah, blah, blah. Absolutely nuts. But that's where we are. They can deny genocide that occurred in 4K. Now, the reason why Israel is so disliked right now is because, unlike other conflicts that Israel's been involved in, we have the internet. And not only do we have the internet, we have X, we have Rumble, and we have other platforms that aren't so controlled by the Zionist lobby and pro-censorship. And what ended up happening was people saw these images of children getting bombed. People saw these images of children starving. People saw these images of people being dismembered by explosives. People saw these images of people being shot by the IDF while peacefully protesting. And the world quickly started to turn against Israel. Most importantly, the United States. Okay? You have people on the left side of the camp saying this is a genocidal apartheid ethno state that is killing people. So they're protesting from a humanitarian perspective. You have people on the right that are protesting from a humanitarian perspective, but also from a nationalistic perspective. We are occupied by a foreign nation that is conducting a genocide that, subverts our government and utilizes our power and our resources to cover for themselves as they commit atrocities in our name. And we fund it, right? But the bottom line is this. Both people on the far left and on the far right are coming together and understanding that Israeli influence in our government is a serious problem. And I think also it's interesting when you take someone like a Hassan Piker or a Kyle Kulinski, far leftist, I would say, damn near socialist, and they're agreeing with people like me, some of you guys might consider me more on the far alt-right, right? So if you got people from completely different political spectrums agreeing on this topic, I think it's safe to say that it's a problem, right? I think it's fair to say. Now, what October 7th basically did, though, was it blew the lid on the ironclad censorship regime that Israel had. Because prior to October 7th, as I discussed before, if you talked about this topic, you were immediately targeted, immediately removed, immediately demonetized, immediately attacked, or whatever it may be, and they got you up out of there right away, before your ideas could spread, right? But after October 7th, with the explosion of platforms like X, Elon Musk procuring it, Rumble, and also TikTok, they couldn't censor everybody. People started making videos on TikTok. TikTok, as you guys know, as much as I hate that platform, it's really good for organic growth. And it's left dominated. And we all know how the left feels about Israel at this point. So people were posting pro-Palestine content. People were posting from the river to the sea. They were posting the images of the kids getting blown up. And the youth started to get radicalized and red-pilled on what is going on in the Middle East. Conversely, on Twitter, which is a more of a pro-right-wing app, people were talking about what was going on and posting images of the kids getting blown up and killed. Right? So in their own way, young people on the left were on TikTok, and there's some conservatives obviously that use TikTok as well. And then young people on the right who use Twitter were seeing what the hell is going on, and they came to the same conclusion. Our support of Israel is unacceptable. They're killing people in our name. We're giving them a massive amount of support, and this is unacceptable. And people got red pilled on this topic, right? And it was too much for the ADL to handle. It was so bad that Jonathan Greenblatt had to go to Israel and say, look, we got a TikTok problem. We need to do something about TikTok. Now, let me explain to you guys the power. Anyone that tries to sit there and tell you that Israel doesn't run this country, you look them in the eye and you tell them, shut up. And I'm going to give you guys a talking point that you can go ahead and use. And I haven't seen many people point this out. For you guys to understand this, we need to go back to 2020. In August of 2020, there was talks of banning TikTok. As you guys know, after the pandemic, people were stuck in their homes. TikTok exploded in popularity. Everyone and their mom was using it. But the United States government looked at it as a problem because they called it Chinese spyware. So for national security reasons, they wanted to get rid of it. And this is under the Donald Trump administration, by the way. There was talks about banning it, getting rid of it for national security reasons. Fine. Guess what? Never actually happened, right? Fast forward to 2023, 2024, as the letter to America is blowing up on TikTok, as From the River to the Sea trends, as the exposure of AIPAC lobbying our politicians explodes in popularity on TikTok, as progressive political commentators are criticizing Israel on TikTok. And Zionist lobbies get together and say, this is a problem. We need to get rid of this. Not only did they say that we need to get rid of this, the Heritage Foundation, which we're going to talk about them as well here, who are cucking themselves as we speak, wrote out something called Project Esther. This strategy was written before Trump came into office, and in it, it outlined combating the anti-Semitism in the United States. They talked about TikTok on there a little bit. And Jonathan Greenblatt talked about it as well. Now, when Trump came into office, right, what did he do? He was in a rock and a hard place because TikTok was responsible for him getting elected. As you guys know, Charlie Kirk is big on TikTok, one of the few conservatives that was able to stay on there without getting banned. And Trump used it quite a bit for his campaigning. Trump heavily relied upon social media to get elected, while Kamala Harris relied upon conventional advertising with, mainstream celebrities, et cetera, that really don't have influence. They're famous, but they don't have influence. Meanwhile, Trump relied upon influencers to build said influence. And he won. So Trump had a vested interest in keeping TikTok open, and also a lot of Americans use it for business, right? So to shut it down simply because of Israel, it doesn't really look too good. So what they ended up doing is, when Trump got in, it got shut down for 24 hours, and then it got reactivated. And when it got reactivated, you couldn't put watermelon emojis, you couldn't say AIPAC, you couldn't say from the river to the sea, certain content was being suppressed, etc. But that wasn't good enough. That wasn't good enough. They said, we need to get someone to buy this thing so that we can have more control over it. An American to buy it, right? So what ended up happening was they kind of had like something close to like a continuing resolution where they were, okay, look, we're going to defer it. We're going to, buy them a little bit more time, but we need someone to go ahead and buy this and, put some American interest in it, right? American. So fast forward, your boy Larry Ellison purchases TikTok, and he procures, I think, Paramount and some other big media companies at the same time. Now, for those of you that don't know who Larry Ellison is, I'll make it simple. He's a Zionist who supports the IDF, okay? He procures TikTok, and what happens? The censorship once again comes back. It's even more censored now when it comes to pro-Palestine stuff. So why am I telling you all this? I'm telling you this so that you guys understand. When it came to American national security and avoiding Chinese spying, we didn't get rid of TikTok. But when it came to the Zionist lobby saying we need to get rid of TikTok because we don't like what they're saying about Israel, they got rid of TikTok. Let that sink in. American national security in 2020 came second to the pressure and power and influence of the Zionist lobby in 2025. Add to that as we speak, we saw a bunch of college students being grabbed up all across the country for protesting against Israel. Whether it be Mahmoud Khalil at Columbia or the girl that was picked up in Somerville at Tufts. Now look, we don't have to agree with these people politically. I don't a lot. These guys are leftists. A lot of them are socialists. But the United States First Amendment of freedom of speech was literally designed to protect political speech especially. And the fact that we had people being picked up that are legally here, by the way, they're students, for political speech criticizing a foreign nation. Hell, at one point, you can burn an American flag and nobody would care, but if you burn an Israeli flag, you could get deported for that. So Trump had to come back and be like, oh yeah, well, if you burn an American flag, that's illegal too now, right? Because of all the backlash that he got. The fact that all of this legislation was passed out for a foreign nation, don't let any of these people gaslight you and try to tell you that Israel doesn't run America. They do. They absolutely do. Okay? We have laws in place to protect them from criticism in the United States. So I talked about October 7th and the media landscape before October 7th, prior to what it is now. Now we're going to get into some of the stuff that's going on now in 2025. Now the genie's out the bottle and everyone is, red pill on this stuff. You look up a top H, if you guys know what I'm saying, I'm on YouTube. You look up one of his AI speeches, you look at the comment section, everyone's woken up. You go on Instagram, right? And you look at the comment section and people are making jokes. Hey, this was promised to this guy 3,000 years ago, right? 109 countries, right? You get kicked out of 109 bars, blah, blah, blah. You see that this content is starting to be able to put that out there on YouTube, because one of the benefits, right, of Donald Trump coming into office, even though he was behind a lot of this legislation that's responsible for censorship, he did also help censorship recede a bit, which allowed us the opening to be able to talk about this in the first place, right? Because under the Biden and Kamala administration, talking about this was big L until after October 7th. So now with Trump, at least him coming in, has put more pressure on these social media platforms to allow more free speech. Because as you guys know, Donald Trump was a victim of censorship himself after January 6th. He was banned off of every single platform in early 2021 after the insurrection, right? So that is one of the benefits, despite the fact that he has implemented portions of Project Esther, which I explained to you guys before, was a comprehensive plan written by the Heritage Foundation to combat anti-Semitism. A lot of the things that you guys are seeing the administration implement now when it comes to combating anti-Semitism comes from Project Esther. And I encourage all of you guys to go ahead and take a look at it. I've been talking about this thing for well over a year, and I knew that this was going to be the game plan or the outline that this administration would utilize when they came into power. And that was one of the things that Donald Trump also ran on, is that he was going to go harder on the Israel haters, which, we're seeing him happening. Despite the fact that censorship did go back a bit and gave us a window to come and have these discussions, we are seeing the window close a little bit, and that brings us kind of where we are now. So during the course of what I call the Great Awakening, many prominent figures in the political sphere have come out and opposed Israel, right? You have people on the left who pretty much virtually every single big political commentator on the left is critical of Israel except for Dave Pacman, because he's a right? And he's also one of them boys. But virtually everyone else on the left, critical of Israel. Don't like it, look at it negatively, etc. However, on the right, which like I told you guys before, has typically been a safe haven for Zionists, there have been some big voices coming out and criticizing them. Candace Owens, Tucker Carlson, Nick Fuentes, myself, and many others, right? And this is unorthodox because typically the right wing has always been pro-Israel. The Republican Party in itself has been funded, supported, and propped up by lobby. So one of the biggest right-wing conservative commentators that's been critical of Israel for a very long time is a guy named Nick Fuentes. I'm sure all of you guys know who he is, right? And because he was critical of Israel since he was 18 years old, the Zionist lobby, the ADL, and these media organizations have done everything in their power to destroy him. Whether it was Ben Shapiro making sure that he never uttered his name and made sure that he got removed from Daily Wire, or it was the ADL constantly making hit pieces on him to ensure that he would get banned off of every single platform, or it was the SPLC or any of these organizations, Media Matter, etc. Not only did they go after him, they went after anyone who worked with him. As you guys know, back in 2023, we did a historic debate between him and Destiny, where they debated American support of Israel and the benefits and the detriments to it. And it was a fantastic debate. We had over 100,000 people watching. It was great. This was back in 2023, before October 7th, by the way. And obviously that put us on the radar. That got us demonetized. I'm not here to talk about that. I'm here to let you guys know that they didn't just target him, but they targeted anyone that platformed him, and they targeted anyone that was an ally of him. And I don't regret anything. And I'm glad that we did it because it made us stronger and more resourceful being demonetized. And now we're not relying upon just YouTube and these other platforms like Twitch, etc., for monetization. So though it was difficult to endure that for a period of time, it made us stronger, it made us more resourceful, and we no longer depend on these platforms for income. So it was a blessing in disguise. We get remonetized, awesome. If we don't, it is what it is. But that's not the point of this discussion. The point of this discussion is to let you guys know that they had a hard on for this guy for a very long time because what he was saying was dangerous and true. So they did everything in their power to contain him for the better part of 10 years. And Nick really started to pick up traction this year after censorship started to recede. And rightfully so. He's been censored for a very long time. And a lot of these ideas and a lot of the things that he predicted happened. Israel waged a war against all of their enemies, utilizing October 7th as an excuse. Israel dragged us into a conflict with Iran, like he predicted. The Israel lobby exerted an enormous amount of power to get TikTok shut down. You talked about the attack on the Ivy League schools, how the Department of Justice went after Harvard, Columbia, and all these other institutions, threatening withholding federal funding because they allowed these protests to occur. He was right on the money about a lot of this stuff. So they did everything in their power to contain him. But you can't withhold the truth forever, right? There's a famous saying, there's three things you can't stop: the sun, the moon, and the truth from coming out. And that's exactly what happened, right? Now, as I was explaining to you guys before, after October 7th, when everyone else was calling out all this stuff, right? They couldn't ban everybody. And one of the rising voices was Nick at the time, right? So what ended up happening was started to get more popularity, got unbanned on X. He was right about a lot of his predictions. A lot of people tuned into the show, which I encourage all of you guys to go watch America First whenever he's live. It's great stuff. And he started to get a lot of popularity. It was undeniable. The very institutions and the very parties that did everything in their power to suppress him and destroy him now had to accept him. And this really came to a head after the tragic assassination of Charlie Kirk, right? As you guys know, there were adversaries for different reasons, right? They disagreed on the Israel topic. I'm not here to really discuss that too much, but what I will say is that he was assassinated. Rest in peace to Charlie. We don't have to agree politically to show a little bit of respect and compassion for someone. At the end of the day, he was a good man that had a family, and for him to be assassinated in that manner in front of all those people was unacceptable. And I hope the people that were responsible, whoever they are, all face justice. But that created a void. And in that void, Nick blew up, right? Rightfully so. It's undeniable popularity. So what ended up happening was he went on Candace, had a discussion with Candace. Tucker had mentioned him. There was a little bit of a back and forth between him and Tucker. And that brings me to the interview, right? So as you guys know, I think maybe it's been 2 weeks now or so, Nick Fuentes appeared on Tucker Carlson's podcast, right? And that a discussion that some people, I would say a majority of people loved, but some people hated, right? And we know who those people are that hated it. They were coming at Tucker saying, look, you platformed this and he's this and he's that and blah, blah, blah. And they were losing their minds over him platforming Nick, right? And by the way, a lot of these people are the ones that say, oh yeah, like we don't believe in censorship. But when it comes to talking about Israel and talking about this topic, they believe in censorship, right? And it's also important for you guys to understand that while Israel was conducting this warfare all across the Middle East, where they were attacking Syria, they were attacking Iran, they were attacking the Houthis down in Yemen, they were attacking Lebanon, right? They kind of took their finger off the pulse when it came to American media, right? They're more focused on attacking their enemies than attacking their adversaries on social media. What ended up happening is it allowed us to kind of be able to speak freely to a degree where we were able to talk about what was going on over there and be critical. But now that the ceasefire began, even though they're still killing Palestinians, but for the most part, the warfare has ended in Gaza, for the most part. Now Israel is starting to refocus its strategy on media. This is why they're paying influencers $7,000 per post. This is why your Twitter timeline has changed to pro-Israel all of a sudden. This is why they're starting to censor people on certain platforms that are critical of Israel. And I predicted all of this. I told you guys this months ago that we better enjoy this while we can because they're going to come after all of us. And they are. And it's happening right now. Netanyahu's been doing a press run. He went on pro-Israel podcast. He went and did an interview with Tatum, Trigonometry, Patrick Bet-David. I can't remember who else, but like there were pro-Israel podcasters. Oh, Nelk Boys. No, crazy. And, you know, he does these softball 40-minute interviews with all these people, right? To push the Hezbollah, push the beheaded babies myth, push the babies in ovens myth, push the Israel's just defending itself myth, not address the genocide, not address the starvation, deny the starvation, say that Hamas is stealing the food, push out all the Hezbollah lying talking points, right? As usual. And now that they've taken their foot off the gas a little bit when it comes to the warfare, now it's about information warfare. And they're refocused on that. Okay. And they're clearly seeing that people like Candace Tucker, Nick, myself, and many others, Dave Smith, Norman Finkelstein, you know, Suleiman, Jake Shields, Dan Bilzerian, so many different big figures on multiple platforms, by the way. This isn't just on YouTube or video platforms, but this is also on Twitter and Instagram and many others, right? And if I don't mention you, I apologize. But both on the left and the right, now they're refocusing on the media landscape in the United States. Now they're refocused on that. And this is why I built this all up for you guys to understand. This is a group of people that have been ostracized from many different societies, expelled from many different societies, and persecuted from many different societies for thousands of years. Israel is the only thing that they have, okay? This is why this international cabal works together, and they work together very strongly to protect the interests of Israel. Whether it's Americans here, Americans in Australia, New Zealand, the United Kingdom, etc., they all work together to ensure the protection of Israel, okay? This is why a lot of these billionaires, like a Bill Ackman, who is a lifelong Democrat, by the way, will turn on his party if it means defending Israel. He spent millions of dollars trying to keep Zohran Mamdani out as mayor of New York City, despite the fact that Mamdani is a Democrat. Why? Because Mamdani is critical of Israel. He spent millions of dollars attacking his former school, Harvard, getting Claudine Gay out of there because they were being critical of Israel. This is a guy that donated money to the Klans. This is a guy that's been a lifelong Democrat. But what did he do in 2024? He went ahead and supported Donald Trump. Why? Because Donald Trump was going to be more pro-Israel. That's just one example, but there's many others. The bottom line is this. Red or blue, right wing, left wing, it doesn't matter. The bird's going to Israel. Okay? When it comes to picking their normal political party in the United States, or the party that's going to be more pro-Israel, they're going to pick the party that's more pro-Israel. Okay? So in other words, these people are Israel first. That's fine. I don't have a problem with that. I respect nationalism. However, do not sit there and try to say you're an American patriot or subvert our government or lobby to get us dragged into conflicts and or waste our tax dollars for a country that quite frankly doesn't give us the same level of value back. I think they create a lot of headaches for us and problems for us. Whether it's them bombing Qatar, us having to intervene and bomb Iran in their behalf, potentially risking World War III because they wanted to go ahead and run this Operation Rising Lions. And we had to come in because they didn't have to intercept their missiles to defend themselves properly, right? So anyway, I digress.